Welcome back to Eliances Heroes, where heroes in business align. To be part of our super community and find out more about Eliances, visit www.Eliances.com. Now, back to our super host, David Cogan, founder of Eliances.
Can it get any more incredible than this? Show is all about heroes, those that are builders in the community. Be sure you check out our website so you can hear some interviews like the President of the United Nations that we had on, Big Lots CEO Richard Branson, and so many more heroes. And it keeps going on because wait until you hear about our next hero. There's several milestones in the aviation history. Wright brothers is one, right? Hindenburg might be another. First rocket to outer space. I can go on and on, but let's talk about the Spirit of St. Louis transatlantic flight from New York to Paris, flown by Charles Lindbergh in 1927. Now that is one of an amazing feat. Well, we're going to get as close as we can to Charles Lindbergh now because we have the daughter of Charles Lindbergh, that's right, who is now the part of the Lindbergh Foundation, and that's Reeve Lindbergh. Now, you can't possibly forget her last name, Reeve Lindbergh. It's the 90th anniversary of your father's epic New York to Paris flight. How do you plan to celebrate this amazing event?
Oh, gosh, there are lots and lots of plans all over the world, really, that people are planning events in New York and events in Paris and events in little towns all over the world, actually, because of all the places that he flew. And I might be celebrating right here on my farm in Vermont, which is where I live.
Fantastic. And you can learn more by going to lindberghfoundation.org. Now, your parents, Charles, who passed away in 1974, and Anne, who passed away in 2001, believed that, quote, true progress and a high quality of life require both the advances of science and care for nature, and that these critical endeavors must be in balance. How does the Lindbergh Foundation carry on that mission today?
Oh, you said it so well. I'm really pleased at the way you put that. The Lindbergh Foundation works to balance nature and technology with projects all over the world. Right now, we're focused on something we call Air Shepard, and it involves aerial drones. We all think of drones as being perhaps warlike or spy kinds of things, but these are in a sense, I think, angel drones because they look down. They take a view of what's going on with the elephants and the rhino who have been so endangered by poaching. And with that view, the park rangers and others can come in fast if they see poaching, and it has incredibly cut down on poaching in the three countries where we've been operating. That would be South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. And it has been a joy to be associated with this work. I'm just so pleased.
And we're so happy for what you're doing and continuing and making an impact in the community. What do you think your father, Charles Lindbergh, would think of today with the world? And what advice do you think that he would give to others now?
I think he would have given the same advice that he gave me. I grew up way after the Spirit of St. Louis flight, although I did fly with him, and we did have a forced landing. We kind of didn't quite crash, but I was very young, and I was fascinated. But in any case, he talked a lot about his world, the world of early aviation. He was very, very young when he began to fly. And he said if he had to do it again, if he had to choose an adventure now, he would work with the endangered species and vanishing wildlife, vanishing landscapes, and he loved technology. He just absolutely loved it from the time he sold milking machines in Minnesota, and he rode his motorcycle to college, and he loved technology, but he felt that we had to be careful to preserve the kind of wilderness that he had grown up in and that our forefathers had grown up in. He said we absolutely have to balance the two you don't want to give up the one or destroy the other. So everything he did during the time I knew him had to do with that balance, whatever it was. And he worked again all over the world, trying in the Philippines with the Philippine eagle, and in East Africa, trying to preserve the wildlife there. Years and years ago, there were poachers in East Africa, and he said, people have to make a living. We can make a living preserving these creatures and preserving our land, and we don't have to give up the technology. We do have to balance.
So important, absolutely. You're listening to Eliances Heroes with me, David Cogan. Be a hero. Go to where entrepreneurs align. Be part of the community. That's Eliances.com. And believe it or not, we're talking live with the daughter of Charles Lindbergh, Reeve Lindbergh, that is doing so much for the community. She is part of the Lindbergh Foundation.org. She is also an author of more than 24 books for children and adults, and has appeared in magazines and periodicals including New York Times Book Review, New Yorker, Washington Post. In fact, you wrote your first book. Let's talk about what inspired you to write your first book.
Oh, golly. My very first book of all was a fictionalized account of my life in Vermont. My first memoir, I was asked to do a memoir, I wrote about my family. It was called Under a Wing, and I wrote about growing up in the Lindbergh family, and I had a great time writing about it because I realized that as I grew up, I had no clue as to what my famous parents were about or why we had all the attention, because, of course, they tried very hard to keep our lives private. And when people asked one of my brothers on the playground, they asked him, didn't our father, wasn't he the first man to fly to Paris? And my brother said, yeah, and he discovered America. So we knew there was something important and huge, but we didn't really know what it was because we were quite protected.
In fact, yeah, you grew up with a family of famous parents, and you went on to live a relatively private life. Now you
very
have
much so.
Yeah, and now you have your own children. You've got grandchildren.
I do.
What advice do you have for children out there, for parents that are listening that want to raise their children to make a positive mark on womankind? How can they avoid the pressures of society and find their own way to be successful like you have?
Gosh, I think I would say what my parents told me was to be yourself, follow your own way, don't let people pressure you too much, and live the truth and love your family.
I mean, absolutely incredible. In fact, too, is we have a member, a part of our community his name is Nova Hall, and
I know him.
Yeah,
I know Nova. He's a sweetheart.
He is. In fact, he's got flying overtime. He's working on the Grumman Goose, building the plane, the whole thing with that.
Oh, great.
So much, and I mean, and speaks so highly of the foundation and of your father, and just making the mark, doing so much. You also serve on a number of local, state, and national organizations. Tell us about maybe an involvement of one of those that you feel near and dear close to, besides the Lindbergh Foundation.
Well, there's one that is connected in a way with the Lindbergh Foundation. It's called the Harry Frank Guggenheim Foundation, and this would be the Guggenheim family that everybody knows about, with the art museum and wonderful support of the arts, but also my father's old friend Harry Guggenheim became very interested in aviation as a young man, and he and his family supported a great deal of my father's work in aviation. But later on, he got very interested in the problem of human aggression and violence, and set up a foundation to study that problem with. And they do conferences, and they give grants, and they work again worldwide to study this problem of human violence, whether it's gangs in New York or the kinds of things like Boko Haram in Africa, which in fact is one of the organizations that we are concerned has profited from elephant ivory poaching. But the Guggenheim Foundation, I've just been on a phone call with them yesterday in one of their meetings, and I'm so privileged to be not just connected with that family who were connected with our family forever, but that they're doing such good work very quietly. These people don't blow their own horn at all, but they're doing this work to study and try to combat aggression and violence in the world.
Well, Reeve, I know that your father, Charles Lindbergh, would be so proud of you today. You share the story of your family. You bring light to the world with your words. You're a hero. We're honored to talk with you today. Reeve Lindbergh, who can be reached at lindberghfoundation.org. This is David Cogan with Eliances.